Well, interestingly enough, I received a tip from someone that was directly involved with the planning of an event that Charlie Kirk was supposed to attend the following day, on September 11th, the day after his assassination. Charlie was slated to speak in Woodland Park, Colorado at the Charis Bible College. Okay, so that's in Woodland Park, Colorado. He was slated to speak there. And according to this person, after Charlie got assassinated, there was a bit of a panicked meeting that took place, which was headed by the chief of police. They decided to transform this event into a vigil, and they were panicked because, believe it or not, they had absolutely no security plan in place. They thought, how odd. We don't have a security plan in place. Now we better consider this, and we need to make sure that we have police officer involvement. Why didn't Dan Flood and Brian Harpole and Turning Point USA's security have any coordination with the police department up in Colorado?
You heard Brian Harpole on Shawn Ryan say, well, you know, we planned the operation. We started planning the security operation for the event on September 10th at Utah Valley University. On the 24th of the prior month, we started doing the timeline, the discussions with the local police and the administration at the university, and, you know, making sure we had a plan in place. And actually, it actually even began before the 24th, you know, the initial meetings and stuff, the logistics of the security of the event. But there was no security plan in place for the events the day after at Theresa Bible College. You all probably remember Brian Harpole from tpusa. You might not know who he is. It's been some time. If you need a little reminder, here's a video of Candace Owens talking about Brian Harpole. But what I'm going to tell you in this video, there's no defense whatsoever of what Candace just exposed, with a whistleblower who came out, part of the organizing committee of the event that Charlie was supposed to take place at and participate in on the 11th of September, the day after he was unalived. What Candace just exposed is the biggest bombshell yet. I don't think people are giving it credit. She took some time off. I think she had a little vacation or something. But there's no way to, you know, rhetoric spin out of what she just exposed. But anyways, here first is Brian Harpole. You'll see a video of him here and right here, and Candace talking about some oddities, okay, with this man.
By the way, I want you guys to know I have reached out to Brian Harpole now 4 times. I've also reached out to Dan Flood. I am happy if he texts me tonight and says, here's where I was on the morning of the 9th, and here's proof of that. I'll say, okay, it wasn't Brian Harpole.
She's referring to the allegation that Brian Harpole was seen at Fort Huachuca, right? Because so far, despite the fact that Brian Harpole, Dan Flood, these people or whoever, you know, they all have her contact. They've all talked to Candace. They've known her for years. They are still not actually telling her where they were. They're not giving her a proper alibi.
I feel like it was. I feel at this stage that it was. I otherwise cannot make sense of Andrew Colbett's actions. So
there's Brian Harpole, right? Man accused of being at Fort Huachuca, but also a man who's been on the media spin, okay? So this is also one other odd point I want to bring up regarding Brian Harpole, because while he was on his media run, his media blitz, right after Charlie Kirk was unalived, he came out and he was saying stuff on Shawn Ryan's show that we can look back at, we can reflect on, and we can say this does not align with the reality. So there have been some small lies, there have been some odd lies that Candace and the online community have caught regarding Brian Harpole and what he said on Shawn Ryan. This is one of them. Again, what I'm going to show you here in a minute is absolutely insane.
Comes back, and his last correspondence was, I got you covered. What else am I to do?
Candace Owens revealed that Charlie Kirk's security chief, Brian Harpole, lied to Shawn Ryan about the text messages regarding securing the roofs on UVU campus. She reveals tpusa employees have been leaking information to her about the security protocols.
When a command level person from an accredited police department says, I've got this area. Jeez.
Oh, pick me. So I could confirm to you guys that something else that they could have done would have been to at least walk around UVU when they arrived. They didn't. Never did a walkthrough. And I can also tell you that this is a severe misrepresentation because the reason why he says Sorensen, and obviously many people picked up on this, like Lozzie is supposedly where the student got up on the roof. So why would Sorensen even matter? Well, apparently, and again, I confirmed this with security inside of Turning Point. There somehow happened to be a leak. And so they can't dispute this. But actually, Dan Flood was primarily and only concerned with the flag of halls, which is behind. That's what was behind Charlie. So I'm going to actually show you this, what they're referring to and why he says Sorensen. I don't know if your mouse can move here. I don't know if you're able to do that. It's okay if you can't. But you can see up there on the right where it says Sorensen Student Center. Well, there is a way, as you can see, to get down and get across to the walkway. And that's what they wanted to secure. They wanted to secure and to make sure that nobody had access above Charlie's head. And that's why he says the walkway. He knew that, by the way. Obviously, he knew the context of that. It's very strange that he's reading that off of his phone as if it's on his phone and he had the communication. That's fundamentally dishonest. He should have said, this text message happened between Dan Flood and Jeff Long, and here's what it was pertaining to, or he should have showed more, but he couldn't show more. And, Shawn Ryan got played. He did, and he should be upset that he got played because they're basically using him to just propagandize the situation and pretend that they're somehow the victims. Something else that is very strange that I was told early on when all these leaks were coming is that not only did Turning Point not walk the campus when they got there, I'm referring to the security, but also the only thing that Dan Flood apparently cared about was making sure that their SUVs had clear access behind Charlie, in and out access. So they were not concerned about any other rooftops. They were not concerned about walking to make sure that they had access to other rooftops, obviously, or to make sure that they could see what points it was that the people could just walk onto the courtyard. They weren't concerned about any of that. All they cared about, for whatever reason, was the flag of halls, controlled access to the flag of halls. And I'm wondering if that reason is because, this is really interesting, but I told you, it's kind of strange that there were only 2 videos of people really that saw the alleged shooter on the roof that sprinted off of Lozzie. I found that to be quite strange. There were a lot of people there that day, a lot of action that was caught. There wasn't even any more testimonies that came out. And when we hunted down the origin of those videos, I found it strange that those students who shot it didn't post it themselves. They went through third-party people, fourth party people, one person, both of them jumped through multiple hoops to get that video out. And when we tracked those people down, both of those students or non-students were in the military, right? ROTC. I found that to be very interesting and compelling. And I am wanting to know more about what was happening in that Hall of Flags. Something is off here. There seemed to be a lot of buzz about the Hall of Flags. Even that Indian kid that we had showed you was taking that shot, who said, like, oh, I didn't know Charlie, but he was really popular, was posting all of these videos and somehow gave his videos to the news. He was in the Flag of Halls, or the Hall of Flags, pardon me. I think more needs to be known about what was going down in the Hall of Flags.
So, weird oddities, things that are hard to explain, uncomfortable truths about the 2 military personnel that cycled the video through person after person after person until it reached social media. Kind of weird, very weird. I personally think not as weird as this. This is Candace Owens last night on her show. I saw Buckley Carlson, Tucker's brother, quote retweet this, and he's like, yeah, that is the craziest thing I think that's been exposed thus far, which is Charlie Kirk's security team did not have any plans for security on the next tour stop. On September 11th, Charlie Kirk was set to speak at Therese Bible College on September 11th, the very next stop after Utah Valley University. And there was no security protocol in place. Well, of course not. Why would there be security protocol in place if someone knew that this was going to happen on the 10th and there would be no event on the 11th? Is that not weird? We also have another clip we can reflect on with Brian Harpole to simply show that is actually an extreme abnormality. Because usually, Brian Harpole leads security for Charlie Kirk. They'd plan security months in advance for these events. But for some reason, the event on the 11th not only was not planned out months in advance, the security was not planned out months in advance. There was just no security framework planned at all.
Someone called me last night and told me a very strange story about what happened to her back in the 90s at an evangelical university. But first, we have to revisit Brian Harpole's story about how far in advance they typically plan security, because someone has leaked to me another glaring oddity in this security protocol. Let's jump right back in. Welcome back to Candace. Do you know what I think? I think that whoever made the decision for Brian Harpole to sit down with Shawn Ryan made a terrible mistake. Big PR mistake, PR nightmare. That's kind of been the story here.
It's also been the story with Erika Kirk, like when she said, I was never on an Egyptian plane on Barry Weiss's show, but no one accused her of that. When she said on Fox News that she's not going to give up where the location of where Charlie Kirk is buried because people are going to desecrate the grave, even though no one asked for that. They just asked whether or not Charlie had been buried. And there was another one. The Erika Kirk with where she was on the 8th, allegedly, when she was seen near Fort Huachuca, not at Fort Huachuca, and then via Andrew Colvet's text to that Paramount Tactical YouTuber, when he accidentally leaked it on a live stream. He wasn't supposed to do that. He said to Paramount Tactical, text from Erika. Erika was never in a fort, a military fort or something. She was never in a military fort. No one accused her of that. She was never at Fort Huachuca on the 9th. No one accused her of that. They said they saw her at a hotel nearby the fort on the 8th. Kind of getting a lot of bullshit from this media tour they're all going on.
One long bad PR decision after the next, because the issue is Brian said too much. The internet is meticulous. The internet is clocking them every sentence. It's really easy to catch people in inconsistencies and then to keep replaying what they said about certain things, especially when they don't add up. So I would like to gently remind you all back at home what Brian Harpole said about what typical preparations entail for Charlie Kirk events. Take a listen.
Let's move into the threat assessment and the pre-planning for the event.
Absolutely.
How many days prior were you guys there?
We generally, the permitting process and all that goes on behind the scenes. And then there's a questionnaires that are filled out that we used to. There was a lot of busy work. And then so, kind of like in the military, what you did, we create forms that, hey, let's get this information up front. Mm-hmm. And so that we have a duplication process so that we can confirm it. And so we started our first, before that one, the 24th of the month prior. And so, and that was with the hard conversations, meetings.
You started that on the 24th?
Mm-hmm. Right. And we
That's
do
2 weeks.
At
really?
least. No, it started before that with the intelligence gathering and all that. But the hard conversations, the sharing of information, the conference calls, the data sheets, and we put that in a timeline on an app so that this all goes up and every guy that's on that job can see all the intel that comes in. It's a decentralized command model for the company. And so anybody can make command decisions for the betterment of the client or the team. And so everything goes on that app. And so when I get it, they get it. And when whoever's gathering that intel, it gets it. There's no hold. There's no power hold on it. And so that first information came in on the 24th, and then the information share starts where we're walking through, everything that you need for a detail.
Everything that you need for a detail. Obviously, elsewhere in the interview, he describes this conversation that he had with the chief of police. He's upset about the chief of police not covering the rooftops because he feels that his team was on it. So on it. You're coordinating with the whole police department. You're discussing drones. Drones were not allowed. And so they just had to let that go. Well, interestingly enough, I received a tip from someone that was directly involved with the planning of an event that Charlie Kirk was supposed to attend the following day. On September 11th, the day after his assassination, Charlie was slated to speak in Woodland Park, Colorado at the Charis Bible College. Okay, so that's in Woodland Park, Colorado. He was slated to speak there. And according to this person, after Charlie got assassinated, there was a bit of a panicked meeting that took place, which was headed by the chief of police. They decided to transform this event into a vigil, and they were panicked because, believe it or not, they had absolutely no security plan in place. They thought, how odd. We don't have a security plan in place. Now we better consider this. And we need to make sure that we have police officer involvement. Why didn't Dan Flood and Brian Harpole and Turning Point USA's security have any coordination with the police department up in Colorado?
It's a good question. You heard Brian Harpole on Shawn Ryan say, well, we planned the operation. We started planning the security operation for the event on September 10th at Utah Valley University. On the 24th of the prior month, we started doing the timeline, the discussions with the local police and the administration at the university, and making sure we had a plan in place. And it actually even began before the 24th. The initial meetings and stuff, the logistics of the security of the event. But there was no security plan in place for the event the day after at Theresa Bible College in Colorado. There was no security plan. No one was contacted for security. The police weren't contacted for security. Brian Harpole didn't have a security plan, allegedly. That's what this person who was the organizer of what became a vigil for Charlie Kirk said, who was planning the event for Charlie Kirk. at the Bible college to come and speak there. Now, some of you might thinking, maybe it was a small college, maybe it didn't require much. It literally doesn't matter. Charlie was going to be speaking in front of a crowd of random people, all right? There was going to be, right, it was going to be a random group of students and people coming into this college just like every single other one of his events. Doesn't matter if it was a big, small school, whatever it may be. And that's literally this guy's job. Charlie had a full security team to do that job. So the question is, why was the security just simply not doing their job for September 11th, the day after Charlie Kirk was unalived? Could it be because they already knew that they didn't need a security protocol for the 11th? Right? Could that be? I don't know. Could be. Sounds weird. This seems like a very, very, very big piece of the story that Candace just seemingly stumbled upon that I don't think anyone really would have stumbled upon had, there not been a journalist like Candace digging in wherever she can into trying to find out what's going on. So, cue everyone, cue Laura Loomer, cue all of these idiots coming out and saying that Candace is a lunatic again, because it seems as though she stumbled on something very, very big here. All right. And I agree with Buckley Carlson. I do think that this is one of the biggest things that Candace has stumbled on. Why did the security company, not that gets paid to do security for all these events, not have a security plan or infrastructure or meetings or logistics or timeline or even contact with the local PD in place for the event the following day in Colorado that Charlie Kirk was supposed to be speaking at? That's weird. That is uncomfortable. That seems like a glaring hole in the official narrative that Brian Harpole is putting forward here. So either it was one of the two. Either they plan all the security out months in advance, weeks in advance, and it covers every single facet of, how many people are going to be there and how many times they're going to be breathing in and out of their body throughout the course of the event. How tall every single person is. When was the last time they clipped their fingernails, as Brian Harpole was trying to make it sound like the level of detail and intensity that they put into the planning of the security of these operations, or they don't do that and he was bullshitting and he lied and they don't do that at all. Or maybe it was something in between. Maybe they didn't feel like they needed to plan security for the day on the 11th. Very interesting. Candace Owens. Here she goes again. Before you leave, I want to say thank you for the support, because after 2 years of being banned, we are finally back home on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to our channel and also join as a member on our channel using the link at the top of the description. I rely on the generous support of viewers like yourself to get the truth out to as many people as possible. You can also support the show on Locals or Give Sin Go. The mainstream media and the powers that be are never going to stop attacking us for bringing the truth to as many people as we do. Thank you so much for your support.